I would say just home in on what you do, give what you do the very best you can, and then allow God to move in a way. And if it's to stay in that position, then pray for the passion that comes with that position.
Welcome to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. Join us as we discover ways to define, measure, and grow your culture. We want to help you intentionally build a culture that fits you.
Hey leaders, welcome back to the Build Your Culture Brand podcast. I have with me today my friend and guest, Ricky Dickson, and welcome to the show, Ricky.
Well, thank you. It is great to be a part of it. Great to see you again too, Jay.
Ricky is just recently become the former CEO and president of Blue Bell Creameries. And so I want to get into your story about your career there at Blue Bell and just all the incredible things that happened along the way, and want to hear about your leadership. But what I found interesting about kind of your background is some things that happened on your way to Blue Bell and early, like college days. So something got you to Baylor. You went to Baylor University. What was that key thing that got you to go to Baylor University?
Well, that's a great question and a great way to start my journey. It's hard to hear the word former because 43 years plus being with Blue Bell, it's definitely a part of the fabric of who I am, and what a journey it's been. But in fact, I just finished a book called One Scoop at a Time, which asks that very question. What led me to not just to Baylor, but from Baylor to Blue Bell. And I have to say, it started with a passion for a girlfriend. We dated for right at 3 years. She had a passion for Baylor and I had a passion for her. And I say that in the book. So if that's where she wanted to go, all I knew is that that's where I wanted to be a part wherever she was. Ironically, though, the first week we got there, after 3 years of dating, it was a decision to go different ways. And so I found myself at Baylor thinking, wow, not that it was a bad thing. In fact, it was a great thing. It was a God thing. But when you're at that age, there's a lot of questions that you're asking. But at my time at Baylor in a consumer relation class that I was taking, the assignment at the beginning of the semester was to follow a company for a semester on how they relate to the consumer and write a report and bring it back. And that was pretty much your grade for the whole semester. And so went back home to apartment, called my dad at home and said, Dad, I've got this assignment. He said, well, ironically, I'm reading an article on this little ice cream company down in Brenham, Texas. Let me start it over and see if maybe this wouldn't work. And so we read the article, and I'm thinking, who doesn't like ice cream? I mean, this is tremendous. And so I called down, got an appointment to do my study and my questions. Wrote the paper, but there was really something that I saw while I was there. I thought there's something different about this company. I hadn't really applied anywhere, but I just felt that this is unique. So I went back and applied, and as they say now, the rest is history.
That's a wonderful story. So isn't it interesting how, we're heading in one direction. We think this is the direction, but sometimes, it's important to go down that road because it leads us to something very different. And in fact, your work at Baylor, your career, you weren't headed toward this type of career. This discovery of Blue Bell kind of changed your trajectory, didn't it?
Absolutely. Yes. I do tell people that I ended up as a marketing business journalism major because I only needed 9 hours of accounting. And I thought that then, okay, this fits. At the same time, when you're running a company, those 9 hours, you really need a whole lot more than 9 hours. But you're exactly right. You don't grow up, I guess, thinking one day, especially if you're not familiar with the brand, one day I'm going to go work for an ice cream company. But I really do think that it was God ordained. I think that our relationship got me to where I was in my studies. My studies also got me into a position where I could interview with this company. And thankfully, I listened to his voice and followed those steps. And I guess I thought I could always fall back on a public relation career or an advertising career because that's kind of where I was leaning. But when this opportunity opened up, I thought this is where I want to be, and this is where I believe God would have me to be, and so that's why I followed that lead.
Well, thanks also for introducing your book, One Scoop at a Time. I think it's coming out in July. Is that right? When the release
That's
is?
correct. Yes, July 16th. You can pre-order on Amazon now, but it will be out. It's in print, and so we're in that quiet stage, but we're excited about its launch, and it won't be long that we will have it available.
Okay. Well, if you're watching on our video, YouTube, wherever that is showing, you'll see, the book cover there behind Ricky, and then, but also we'll include a link to the book so people can go ahead and get that pre-ordered. I know, in the way you've organized it, you've taken these scoops of stories, right? A kind of play on words of a scoop, a journalism scoop, and really expanded on this story, but maybe life lessons from each of those stories. So I know we want to unpack a few of those today, and but kind of before we dive into that, I have a couple of questions. One, because I love Blue Bell, right? Because I mean, it's hard to be a Texan and not love Blue Bell. So I know it's expanding, and we finally saw it in northern Missouri while we were living there a couple of decades ago. We were excited when Blue Bell made it that far. So my question for you though is, what's your favorite flavor?
Mm. It's probably the number one question that I'm asked, which is a great question. I answer it two ways. If I give you my heart, it's homemade vanilla. Homemade vanilla is where that really is the flavor that put us on the map, and you can do so much with homemade vanilla. Or I will say whatever we're making. So if I'm in a mood for a scoop of ice cream, work my way over to the parlor, I'll work my way around the variety. And that's the beauty of it. There's certain flavors that hit certain moments or certain times, but homemade vanilla has to be the go-to, and it's really the staple flavor for our company, our foundation.
It really, it just is. It's so good. And so I might throw in Millennium Crunch and Texas Two Step, or well, I call it Texas Two Step. It's not. It's
Yeah,
a
it's cookie two-step. Texas
cookie Two
two-step
Step.
actually was the one of the names that was submitted, but we thought cookie fit the
Right.
narrative really well.
A little more
So
national branded and good.
yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I love hearing, you have a love not only for the company but for the product itself. And I think that's really important for a leader to be invested in the product, right? So, but in your leadership, one way we use kind of a fun way to unpack your own leadership style is, if you had a leadership superpower, what would you call that? What would that be? And what would be a kryptonite, something that works against you as a leader? So how would you or your team answer that question about your leadership superpower?
Well, I'm glad you're asking me. It's not the team, but no, I think it'd be consistent in the answer. I think I've never thought of it as a superpower, but you just mentioned it, passion. What I saw when I first came on uh, with Blue Bell was just the love for the product, but really not just the passion for the product. I would say that the product is actually the conduit because I have a passion for people. And so it's ironic that that we have a product like Blue Bell that creates memories, and to see those memories come, or just unfold, is just an incredible opportunity. And we have flavors that are out there that some swear we made them specifically for them, and yet it doesn't necessarily appeal to someone else. But at the same time, that's why you have the variety that you do have. But I would have to say, definitely the passion for people, and fortunately, again, the product being the conduit to connect those dots. As far as kryptonite, wow, how much time do we have? I would say,
Sure. You have to
I
pick
think,
one.
yeah, okay, good, good. It's always good to self-examine yourself, and I would say my immediate thought would have to be just, I won't say overcommitting, but I can get pretty caught up in the old we can do that, we can do that, we can do that. Oh my gosh, how are we going to do that type mentality? I just early riser, late to bed, and feel like you just make the most of every moment. And so between that and probably a second right behind it would just be how to rest, because really the two of those kind of take you in opposite directions. You need to be, as a leader, rested. You needed to be fresh. You need to be able to make decisions not out of emotion, but from a rational standpoint. And when you don't get the proper rest, you tend to then lean on the wrong side of that equation. So those would be the two that popped into my mind.
Those are
Good
great.
question.
Well, yeah, we'll see how those pop up through the rest of our conversation.
Okay.
So, and it's always good, like you said, be aware of yourself. I think that's a leadership skill we all need to work on, is really self leadership, self examination. As you and I've talked, I've heard some amazing, and I know these will show up in the book too, so people can pick up a copy and catch more details. But I wanted to dive into a couple parts of your story. One, there was this transitional time for you. I think there was a tough assignment you were given early in your career, and tell us a little bit about that story. I think you were going into it thinking it was going to go one direction and ended up going another direction. How did that play out?
Yeah, it's probably there's been a lot in 43 years to be able to look back on, but that's probably the single most um, influential, or what really got my attention as far as maturity, not just as a leader, but as an individual. My career path was on a fast track. I started with a company when things were really happening and happening in a very fast way. And so at the age of 24, I was asked to go back to my hometown of San Antonio to become a branch manager there and manage approximately 30, 35 people, which was just an unbelievable, and again, a God thing, in my opinion. But 5 years later, I was asked to go to Oklahoma, actually Oklahoma City, and to potentially not just open the market up to start with, but potentially become what they would call a regional manager and oversee the area that's in Oklahoma and then and beyond. And so it was a real decision. Do you stay where you're, I don't want to say comfortable, because it was an exciting time, but with family and a sister and two brothers, mom, dad, grandparents, and all, or do you take a step of faith? But with the caveat, or this little hook of there's this promise that's kind of out there. And so I know my heart believed that this is where God wanted me. And so followed in that voice. But I think the thing that changed it so dramatically is it got quiet. And so there was a period of time that there wasn't really any talk about any regional alignments or expansions, and there wasn't any talk about, promotions. And when the day came where I got the call saying, okay, we're going to this big regional meeting and we want everybody to come together and we're going to have dinner, and afterwards, let's get together. I'm thinking this is the moment. This is the time that, I've been, why I technically moved. And when I walked into the room, I could sense that this was not the moment. In fact, it was just the opposite, that it was a pretty hard, about 45 minutes of single spaced, handwritten things that I wasn't doing that I was previously, or things that I was doing that necessarily were not necessarily the priorities. And this wasn't any kind of, and no talk as far as promotion or anything like that. And so it was a real gut check. I went back to the hotel room that I was in, and I sat on the bed, and I just remember thinking, God, I thought you had asked me to come here. I thought I was following your lead, and I left home to be here for this. And how did I miss you? And not audibly, but very clearly, he said, you're not here for you. You're here for me. And it came over me. It's like, okay. And to go with that was, look, you're caught up in a title. I'm caught up in a purpose. And so if you'll get your eyes off of you and get your eyes onto what I have you to do, everything else will take care of itself. And I won't lie. I mean, I'm sitting there, I don't want to say arguing with God, but I'm thinking, I could have stayed in San Antonio. And yet it was the self-examination. I thought, from this moment on, whatever it is that you ask me to do, I truly will do it. And, it's what, gosh, years later, if it wasn't for that time in development of just who I was as an individual, as a leader, there was no way I could accept the role of being the CEO and president of the company. But to me, that was all by listening to his voice and not listening to my own voice. And so, yes, very, very pivotal time. I share that because it's humbling, but it goes to show that God can use you if you'll allow him to, in the way he would want, and not necessarily the way you maybe have planned it out or designed it.
What an incredible, thank you for sharing that. What a
Absolutely.
transparent story, a gut check moment. And I would imagine there's someone listening right now that might be in the middle of that moment. What would you give them as a word of encouragement as they go through this moment?
Well, obviously, this is faith driven. My relationship with Christ is my center. I think that the battle that we have is, even though we've given our lives, or to in my case, my life to Christ, you still fight the things of the world, and so there's a fine line of not, wanting that necessarily for the title. I think it's for the purpose, getting past the title and get to the purpose, because there are so many people that get promoted beyond their capabilities that I've seen, that they're great at one thing, and then when they move up, they're in a whole new skill set that they weren't prepared for. They become frustrated. Those around them become frustrated. And so I would say just home in on what you do, give what you do the very best you can, and then allow God to move in a way. And if it's to stay in that position, then pray for the passion that comes with that position. And that way, when you come into work, whatever it is, and I've from all the way from the front end to the back end of our company, we have key people that love what they do. I have people that are custodians that absolutely do a fantastic job and they love it. Packagers, I don't know how you stand all day in one place and package ice cream. It would be tough for me to do. But we have some packagers that have been there 25 and 30 years and they love what they do. And so I think that the back end of that would be passion to whatever it is. And then just continue to pray that God opens the doors that he would want to open in the time in which he would want them to be opened.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that encouragement. I hope that goes out and hits home with some people and really encourages them. Now so you got up out of that hotel room and it sounds like you knuckled down and really invested yourself even more there in the Oklahoma, that plant and that region. What were some of the activities, ways that you cultivated culture and ownership there in the responsibilities that you had?
Well, culture is really, again, what was the magnet that brought me to Blue Bell. I think that being right out of college and not working really anywhere else, I sold Cokes for the San Antonio Spurs at Hemisphere Arena. That was my job, and mowed, yards, and stayed active in other ways. But so Blue Bell, going through those doors, was the first of really the only corporation, I would say. I never looked at Blue Bell though as a corporation. I looked at it as a family, and so that in itself, that culture was extremely important. And so, as in the roles that I've had, I mean, I went from sales over to production in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, which was a change in itself, to run a plant versus sell the ice cream. But was to really, the best way to do culture is to be able to empathize with those that you're working with, not just sympathize as well, and teach along the way on why you do things the way you do things. I think those two go hand in hand. And so it meant spending a lot of time out on the production floor, a lot of time in areas that probably would rather men not have gone into. When you're changing oil on a screw compressor, you don't need the sales guy there. But I'm there more of just as an encourager than I am to say, okay, do this and do that. It's showing them that we're in this together. And I think that cultural piece is so important, because if they see that you're committed, then it pulls them to want that same commitment for the ultimate goal.
So that is, thank you for answering that and helping us understand, just how you bridge that gap and keep that communication open. In an organization that big, though, I would imagine there's a lot of layers. So many layers with that many plants. How do you push ownership as deep as possible in that type of organization?
Great question. And I think that luckily my answer will be that we grew at a pace that we could maintain and manage that. We didn't try to get big overnight. And so, we started back in 1907 as a little butter company. Here we are, 2024. And so as we've grown, we've layered when we've needed to layer. But communication is obviously the key. And so you start at the top, you start with your staff, you start with your key people, and you empower them, but not just to empower them to make decisions, but to lead others and gather information. So when we get back together, we can make smart decisions. There's a saying that all of us are a lot smarter than one of us. And I know that that's used a lot, but we remind ourselves of that. And so we have, key people over key departments, and then collectively come back together, and the freedom to be able to cross talk across the table on maybe things that you see that maybe you're not seeing from your own area, but others are seeing from other areas. But I think the key to it is that you come to collectively together to get to have the freedom to be able to share what's on your heart, but then when a decision's made, to walk out and be in one. And okay, we're doing it. And this is why we're doing it, and that's critical, I think.
Okay, that is another that leads me to another question. You may have already just answered it, but I want to dive in a little deeper. How do you make decisions? You're in the executive room, right? You're making these executive decisions. What are some keys or principles or guidelines that you all used to make the decision and so that no one knows who was against it when you leave the boardroom?
Mm-hmm. I won't lie to say that there were moments where it got interesting,
Sure.
where you definitely have differences of opinion. I think that the key to it is to keep the respect level at the highest. You want to be able to respect others. If you're a specialist in one area, so for instance, I know how to make it, but I don't necessarily know how to sell it. Well, the salesman doesn't understand how the production guy, why can't you just make it? Well, and so he has to defend the steps in which he did. But I think that the respect across the table is so important. And I think you have to educate yourself. And I also think that as a leader, there are times where you want to make a decision, but the best thing to do is to rest, just to sleep on and then come back. That's probably, if I had a little bit of kryptonite, I'm ready to make a decision. Let's move on to the next thing. And yet there are moments in time that I feel like, I don't think I have enough here to really make the kind of decision that I need to make. And I really do try to use the rational versus emotional in my decision process as well. There are so many times where I can get caught up emotionally into something, but just going home and sleeping and coming back the next day and then picking right back up, it's amazing that what a good night's sleep will do to your thought process. Now, you may land back where you were the day before, but there are, I don't know how many times where, I see now what you were saying that I didn't see before. I love individuals to speak their mind. I always have. I have some people on staff that I think they do it on purpose, to be honest with me, or honest with you, because I think that coming with a different opinion makes sure that we don't overlook something. Now, again, we're talking about maybe ice cream flavors or how we enter a market or should we expand. And so the decisions that we're trying to make, it depends upon the magnitude of those decisions and how they'll affect the company, how they'll affect the employee. But I think that you have to continue to stress that you have the freedom to speak, but also the responsibility to respect. And if you can combine those together, then you can grow as a company. You can grow as I don't want to say a C-suite, but a management team, and then to be able to implement that to the levels below.
I love it. Thank you. Yeah, that's really great points there. I love that distinction between that rational and emotional, and giving yourself time to step away from the emotional side, not to discount it, but to put it in the right perspective. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Now we know anybody who loves Blue Bell, who's known Blue Bell for a while, know that y'all went through a really tough time. And I'd like to dive into that, not so much to get into maybe the problem that happened, but the aftermath and your leadership through this super challenging time for the whole company. So I'll let you share what you will about how y'all got to that point, and then, but I want to get over to that leadership of how you led them through the challenging time through food safety.
Okay. No, again, it's a very defining moment in all of our careers and in our life and in the company, in the history of the company. Obviously, 2015, just saying the year 2015 immediately takes me right back to that spot. At the time, I was vice president of sales, and so we were on the sales side of things, really, which from that point on became how do you recover from something like listeria. It's a product that is a low risk. It's a frozen product. And so, the thought of a pathogen getting in at 20 below really, just was not normal and not common. And so when we heard the news and found out the position that we were in, I think that it immediately brought us to our knees. We pulled together And I think that at the time, Paul Cruzy was president of the company. He insisted that we stay humble, we own it, and we picked those key things up and just continued to build from it. And then when he stepped down or retired at the beginning of 2017, to keep those principles and then add to wherever we needed to add to change that particular side of the culture, to embrace the things that we needed to do, to not just remain the little creamery in Brenham, but to take it to a whole new level. And so I think staying humble, staying true. The fan base was just incredible. We'll never forget the day that we came back into the market, and we didn't know, will anybody be there? And the fact that there were people lined up in the stores from the ice cream case all the way to the front of the store. We were all crying that day. I won't lie. It was just a very, very humbling, and we really took responsibility to a whole new level too. We had a job to do, and we had to do everything we can to make that commitment to take the bar to a whole new level. And so that's what we did. We removed all the equipment, ripped out a lot of the floors, took down the walls, the ceilings, and then rebuilt the inside, and then put in new standard operating procedures that went into place that we learned from not from all areas. We didn't just limit ourselves to ice cream, but we just asked a lot of good questions. Brought in a microbiologist that was, I think world renowned. Learned more about microbiology in my time the last years there than maybe I care to admit. But I think you learn from all that, and the fact that I go back to that passion and the memories where I started. I think that it just challenges you to just be the best you could possibly be every day you walk through that door. And so we were concerned, how do you change a culture on the way you walk into a building and take off your shoes from the very beginning and put on shoes that have never left the plant? How you wash your hands and then wash your hands and wash your shoes and scrubs and hairnets. And we did a lot of that before, but the method of which we were doing it got arranged in a way that we felt very, very confident. And then we put unbelievable environmental testing program into place. And from that environmental testing program, we now test everything that we make, and we don't release it until those test results come back. And so we were, very, very, I won't say confident. We're very pleased with where we're at today. It's an expensive process, but if you're going to do it right, I feel like these are the steps that you have to take. So anyway, what a journey.
What a journey. And there's so many, and our listeners, if anyone's involved in food safety at all, who's listening, I know they would have dozens and dozens of questions for you. Some of the questions I think that might come up would be, how do you get the frontline workers, the ones who are actually, touching product, involved in the product, how do you get them to change their habits? What were some of those things that y'all felt like were helpful to get them on board for changing their habits?
I think the fact that we had never had a layoff in the history of the company going into 2015, when that reality hit, where we actually had to lay employees off, furlough employees, and then really shut down for what ended up about 4 months of not having product on the market. That really was a reality check that, this is real and this could go away. We could all, be looking for work somewhere else. I think that in a small community of maybe 15, 16,000 people, where the iconic brand that is in that community is down, was just a really eye-opening experience. And so as they came back, it was almost like, what do we need to do? What is it that we need to do? And so through all the classes and all the training, and we still do them now. We on a regular basis, constantly having good manufacturing procedural classes that reemphasize the things that we're talking about. They embraced it. I mean, it was really amazing. And then COVID came, and then COVID is like, man, we've already put a lot of this into place, because of what we had gone through. It was like, okay, well, but COVID definitely took it even to a new level. But it just really, everybody rallied together. They embraced it. And when you have those that are around you embracing, no matter what the level, it's easier to get that cultural change to take place. Because the end result is you want to make the best ice cream you possibly can make. You want to make those memories that I talked about earlier, and so you want to be able to work. And if you have a problem and you have to shut down, you're not working.
Ricky, what a great thank you for helping us dive into that story. I know there's probably a lot of other questions we could ask, and if anyone wants to send questions my way, I'll try to get them to you. We'll see if we can, follow up with this with any other questions that our listeners have. One other interesting question I wanted to ask you, because you have such a hero product. I mean, like homemade vanilla ice cream, these products that really stand out, and even the brand has its own, fan base. How do you keep a hero product a hero product?
Well, my immediate response would be is not to compromise. Compromising is an easy thing to do, especially in tough times. But what I mean by that is that we go back to culture, we go back to standards, and there's certain things that are just off the table. And so I think that to make a product that's accepted and not just accepted, but accepted in the way that it has been, you have that responsibility to be able to provide it every time. We have a saying that we kind of coined. Our job is to consistently meet the expectation that drives the passion. It's kind of wordy, but if you think about it, every time you go to the store and you pick up, whether it be Millennium Crunch, Cookie Two-Step, or homemade vanilla, when you get home and you get a bowl and you get it out and you eat that first bite, there's an expectation. And if your expectation is not met, then all of a sudden you start to question. And so I think that the goal is every day that we come into work, our job is to meet that expectation that drives the passion of someone coming back for the second, the third time, fourth time, and then maybe a lifetime. I think that anyway along the line, if you drop the ball in that process, though, it destroys that whole thing. And so I think that everybody has a job to do. They're explained and brought in to ownership of that. So they understand that the way they even process the ingredients as they come through the front, all the way to the driver salesman that actually puts the product in the store. Anywhere along the way, if the ball is dropped, then you've lost that. And so we treat those flavors just like you said, they're heroes. They're our lifeline. That's all we do is ice cream. Yeah, we make some frozen snacks and ice cream, but there's nothing else in our arsenal. And so many of the other companies or brands that are out there, they're one of many products. This is all that we do. And so I think compromise or not compromise is the key. Because let me expand, if I could, a little more on that. Because once you compromise and your employees see you compromise, then what else will you compromise? So if it's okay to do that over here, then why don't we do this over here? And, I look at it, we had a product, butter pecan, which is one of our iconic flavors. And I talk a lot about butter pecan. Well, the price of pecans can go through the roof. And there have been moments in time in our company's history that they just get to a point where you keep making it. And so do you then cut back on the amount of pecans that you put in? Do you just not make it because of the price? Do you raise the price? And so you talk about some around the table discussions on the ethics of the product, that hero product, as you described it. You don't want to mess with what people are expecting when they get it. And so early on, we decided if we're going to make butter pecan, we're going to make it the way it's supposed to be made, period. And that's what we've done. There was one time I think we did raise the price just on that one flavor for a season until the pecan prices came down. There's other times we just didn't make it because it just got to where it was, you just couldn't afford to it. But we never did compromise the integrity of the product during that time. And so that sent a message. I mean, that said that this is who we are as a company. And if we're not going to compromise there, then one other quick example is we're still in a half gallon. We don't see the benefit of reducing the size of the carton and keeping the price the same. That's just a fundamental decision that Blue Bell as a company has kind of stayed with. And it's tempting, believe me, when the cost of everything is going through the roof, reducing the size of the carton is an easy go-to. But once you go down that road, where else would you might consider? And so there's just some fundamental pillars. That is today. I'm no longer there, and so the new gentleman, I think, will have to have those same questions that he'll have to answer. But
All those are at
I
his
know
feet
him,
now, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
I know him well, and I know he'll do a fantastic job.
yeah,
So, but anyway,
yeah.
sorry for the long answer, but staying
No,
consistent, staying
incredible
committed.
answer. Yeah, and you've set him up well. So we look forward to seeing the future of Blue Bell and just the standing on
Absolutely.
your shoulders and taking it to that next level. So what's next for you? You've got this book coming out, and I guess are you available for speaking engagements and other interactions?
Absolutely, yes. The book kind of came I guess, at perfect time. We were in the process of naming my successor, and had this opportunity come to. And I thought, yeah, let's get started on this. And I started my career writing a paper at Baylor, and I thought, why not write about the adventures in a book when I get to the other side of the 43 years? And so that was kind of the catalyst that started it. And from that, yes, I would love to speak wherever, and am available, if I can say that, one scoop at a time. Maybe the only book that I write, or maybe the first of. But what a fun book! A lot of fun stories. Some about ice cream, a little bit more technical on what and how ice cream is made, all the way to passionate stories from consumers that have written us, and then just how it's affected me in my life and in my family. And so we're going to just see what God has in store. I'm excited, and wherever opportunities come, I will be ready.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for being on the show today. I'll include links to how people can get in touch with you in the show notes. And so I look forward to sending people your way. But thanks for the time and just opening up your story for us. To look forward to hearing more stories for you from you in the future.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Always good to see you, but what an opportunity to be a part of this. And thank you for what you do. Changing culture and building culture is a huge thing, and it's what we need in this country. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, and share. You can also visit our website at buildyourculturebrand.com.